All right, so what we're going to do in this one is we are going to take a look at different kinds of rests. There is whole note rest, half note rest, quarter note rest, and eighth note rest. There's all a bunch of other rests too, but those are the four that we're going to really focus on now. And and you just grab that sheet to make sure you got that in front of you, and then you can follow along. At the top of the sheet, it has your, it says whole note rest, half note rest, and it has all four of those listed, and it shows the different values. Like a whole note rest is same as a whole note. It's worth 4 beats. And by the way, rest or when you stop it from ringing, you have a note ringing. You want to put in a rest. That means you have to stop it from ringing. So again, whole note rest are 4 beats, worth 4 beats. Half note rest are worth 2 beats. Quarter note rest are worth 1 beat each, and eighth note rest is worth a half a beat. Now, if you go ahead and you look on that on the line below, what it has is it actually shows those on the staff. And typically, yeah, if you have a whole measure of rest, you would see the very first one, like it shows the whole note rest in the very first measure. That's what you would typically have. You wouldn't see 2 half note rests like in the next measure, or 4 quarter note rests in the next measure, or all those eighth note rests in the very last measure. You wouldn't see it like that. You'd see the very first measure, right? The whole note rest, and that means you got to hold that for all 4 beats in the measure. And if you could, way you can think of this is whole note rest. It's big. It has the whole measure, that it takes up, so it's heavy. So that little rectangle, black rectangle, is hanging down below the line because it's so heavy. Then if we go over into the next measure, we see 2 half note rests. So that's half as heavy. So that is a bit lighter. So that rectangle is floating above it because it's not as heavy. Kind of silly, but it's a way to remember it. Now, also, half note rests are worth 2 beats, and each measure is worth 4 beats. So that means we have to have 2 half notes to equal 4 beats. Quarter note rests are those little squiggly lines, and in order to equal 4 beats, we actually have to have 4 quarter note rests because each quarter note is worth 1 beat. So we need 4 quarter note rests to equal 4 beats. Eighth notes, those are worth a half a beat. So there's really 8 eighth notes within a measure, because since it's worth half a beat, quarter note is worth 4. You have to add in the ands between, so it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So there's 8 eighth notes in there. Again, you're not going to ever see it like this. It's going to be, if you have a whole measure of rest, it's going to be the very first measure, a whole note rest. It's just displayed like this just so you can see how many beats or how many rests are in each measure. So now what we need to do is we need to now go ahead and start taking a look at a couple of exercises, and I'll show you how you work through those. I'll skip around a bit. I won't go through every single exercise, but yeah, like for instance, we'll start with the very first one on there. So that one's you have a whole note, and you can just hit an open string. It's a whole note, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that rectangle is laying below the line, so that's a whole note rest. Now, remember, you have to stop it from ringing, and you hold that for 4 beats. So I'm going to play these 2 measures. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's your 2 first measures on exercise 86. Now, yeah, so that's a whole note in the first measure. Second measure is a whole note rest. You got to make sure you stop it. The next measure, in this 87, we have a half note worth 2 beats. So 1, 2, and then there's a half note rest, the rectangle above the line. So again, half note and a half note rest are worth 2 beats. So put them together, and you got 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So repeat that as many times as you want to get used to that. Now, one thing you want to make sure is you don't stop it too early. You don't want to go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Because you then are turning that half note into a quarter note, or maybe even less than that. So you got to make sure you hold that out for the whole 2 beats, and only stop it on beat 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you don't stop it till you hit beat 3. You got to make sure you play it like that. And then 88 is quarter note rest, quarter note rest. So it's 1, stop it on 2, and you hit it 3, that's the quarter note rest on 4. And again, make sure you don't go 1, 2, 3, 4. You're turning that quarter note into either a half note or an 8th note, or maybe even the 16th note if you're doing it really quick. You got to make sure 1, you hold all the way till you hit 2, you stop it dead on 2, and then you play beat 3, hold it until beat 4, and stop it dead on beat 4, like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So make sure you get that dead on. The next line just has it where it starts out, on with a beat. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can mess around with that. That's pretty self-explanatory. And another line has quarter notes, and say 94. You have a quarter note rest, and then a half note rest in there. All that means is you're going to hit the quarter note 1, then you stop it on beat 2, but you also stop it on beat 3 and 4. So when you have the rest next to each other, remember that you got to hold that for that whole duration. Like in 96, you have a half note rest, you hold it for 1, 2, quarter note rest, still hold for 3, and you don't hit anything till you hit 4. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I put 95 and 96 together, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep. So that's how you do that. The next 97 is 8th note rest now. So normally 8th notes would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. But now we gotta stop it on the ands because there's an 8th note rest connected to each 8th note. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So you're stopping it right after, right on the ands. And then say the next measure, you got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. because it's an eighth note rest on the and of 2, an eighth note rest on the and of 4. So again, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and again, make sure you only stop it right on ands. You don't want to go 1 and 2 and no, 1 and 2 and. You gotta be accurate with this. So yeah, there's that. The rest of it's kind of the same kind of idea, but kind of mixed up a little bit, so you can play around with that. The next line, just it's incorporating quarter notes in there. So you got quarter note rest. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 and. So again, we have a quarter note, 1, quarter note rest. You stop it on 2. Then we have a couple eighth notes there, 3 and then you have another eighth note for 4, and then an eighth note rest on and. So you gotta make sure you stop it on beat 2, and then the and of beat 4. So again, 1, 2, 3, and 4 and. So you gotta stop it right on that and, right after 4. And again, same thing. It just kind of goes through the different rhythmic combinations. Let's say we got, we'll look at 103. So we have a quarter note, an eighth note, and an eighth note rest. So that means we have to play a 1, stop it on an and. Then we have another quarter note, and then we have an eighth note rest, a rectangle floating above the line. So that one would be 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3. Oh no, I got to stop it. Sorry. 1 and 2, 3, 4. And I'll do 104 too. 1, 2, 3, and 4 and. 1, 2, 3, and 4 and then from there it just kind of has some more exercises that you can do with that. I'll pick I'll do 110 and 111 together, two middle of that last line on the first page. So we have 1 and 2 and 3 and, oh wait, no, sorry. There's a quarter note on that the third beat, so you gotta watch out for that. So we have an eighth note rest, eighth note rest, quarter note, and then here's a little tricky one, an eighth note rest followed by an eighth note. So again, we have 1 and 2 and, now it's a quarter note, so 3, and then on beat 4 is when you stop, you know, because that's a eighth note rest. You stop on beat 4, but you still got to hit the and of 4. So it goes like this: 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and. See how I stopped it on beat 4? Because it's the eighth note rest there. Again, 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and. Yep. The next measure, eighth note rest to eighth note, 2 eighth notes after that, quarter note, and then quarter note rest. So 111 is 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Now a little note on alternate picking, because when you do an eighth note, you want to do alternate picking. Normally 1 would be down, so and then that second, the and would be up. Well, we're not going to change that at all. Even though we're not playing beat 1, we're just going to move our pick down but not play it, and then the and we got to make sure we come up on. So again, this is 111, 1, and then and 2 3, and that's a chord note. We hold it all the way till the end, and then stop it on 4. So here's 110 and 111 together. So we got 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. So that's 110 and 114. And so yeah, mess around with those. The next second page is a little added supplement. Actually, that has some ties in there, so we're not covering ties yet, so you can skip the couple of them that have these the little lines that go from one note to the other. We'll talk about that in another one. But yeah, you can practice the other ones in there. There's some more towards the bottom that have 8th note rest in there, and yeah, you can play around with that. So yeah, so there is your assignment for all your rests. So work on that, get those rests down, and then yeah, within riffs or songs or whatever, start taking the open string or one chord or something, and just practice those rhythms on their own. Of course, you want to also work on the actual song or a piece of song or whatever, but work on the rhythm using open string or one chord or whatever. You want to totally focus on the rhythm so you get that down really tight. So yeah, that's it. That's all your rests incorporated now. So work on that, and we'll see you in the next one.